So, uh, first, let me apologize to you publicly because you were supposed to come on last week, and it's my fault. There's a misunderstanding on my part, and so you waited and you canceled and you made all your plans to be here last week, and it didn't happen. My sincere apologies. But you're with us tonight, and we're very, very excited to hear what you have to say. And I know that you're gonna give us a little presentation on depression, and it is so relevant because with the hurricane, with with the economy in Jamaica, with the crime, with this, with the that, with all the things poor people have to deal with, right? I am sure that they are experiencing depression, whether it's identified by a professional or not. And in most cases, they don't have the money for going to see a doctor to talk about depression. You know, they have to just deal with it. So the floor is yours. Open it up. Just go ahead.
Okay, so I'm going to try sharing my screen.
Kevin, you don't mind if I move this banner? I kind of block you.
All right, are you able to see my screen? I can't see anyone, so please bear with me. Wilfred, anybody, can you see my screen?
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
we're not seeing the screen yet.
Yes, it's plain. Clear,
Okay,
100%.
okay.
Like I don't see it. Kevin, where the hell? Oh yeah, we see it now. Depression and suicide
Okay.
talk.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So good day again, everyone. My name is Michelle Codner. I'm a licensed psychologist in the state of Massachusetts. And I'm here today just to talk a little bit about depression and suicide. And this is an informational session with opportunity to ask questions after I'm done presenting my slides. So just a few disclaimers. I have no financial disclosures to declare or any conflict of interest. This is also not a therapy session. It's a talk about depression and suicide. And these are hard topics to talk about, so I would encourage folks, if at any point in time it feels very heavy, taking care of yourself, taking a break from the screen, having a cup of water or something cold to relax you before returning. Just don't disappear forever.
All right.
All right, so today we're going to learn how to define a mental illness, how depression presents and identify symptoms of depression, some treatment that are used with depression and resources, how to support someone who is struggling with depression, and talking a little bit about suicidality and some resources that can be helpful for someone who is struggling with suicidal thoughts. Okay, so according to the World Health Organization, a mental disorder is characterized by a clinically significant disturbance in an individual's cognition. And when we talk about cognition, talking about thinking, right, among other executive functioning skills, emotion regulation, or behavior. It is usually associated with distress or impairment in important areas of functioning. So, impacts your ability to show up for work, show up for school, just be present in life in general and engaging in activities that you enjoy. So, one in every eight person, or 970 million people in the world, live with a mental disorder. And anxiety and depressive disorders are the most common. There are many types of mental disorders, and we're just talking about two today. Mental illness is nothing to be ashamed of. It is a medical problem, just as we would think of heart disease or diabetes as problems. Well, similarly, that's how we would like to look at mental illnesses. They are treatable, and the vast majority of individuals with mental illness continue to function in their daily lives. Mental health is the foundation of emotions, thinking, communication, learning, resilience, hope, and self-esteem. It's also key to relationships or personal and emotional well-being and or ability to contribute to community or society. And it's also a component of well-being that can be influenced by physical health. So what is depression? So depression or major depressive disorder is a common and serious medical illness that negatively affects how one feels, the way you think, and how you act. Depression causes feelings of sadness and or a loss of interest or pleasure in activities that you once enjoyed. It can lead to a variety of emotional and physical problems and can decrease your ability to function at work, school, and at home. Just a little video that I'm not going to play. So some important statistics here. Major depressive episodes have increased in the Black community, and this is statistics from 2023. So 19.5% of youth between the ages of 12 to 17 reported having a major depressive episode in 2023. 8.8% of adults reported having such an episode. And when we look on Jamaica statistics, which is definitely outdated, based on a report in 2016 that I found, 14.3% of Jamaicans reported having a major depressive episode, or 1 in 7 people reported feeling depressed. So as we can see, that's probably a gross underestimate. So that rate is probably significantly higher than than that's being reported.
For sure.
So, yep. Did someone say something? I guess not.
I was just sorry. I'm just possibly responding to what you're saying, and you said that
Oh,
because
okay.
mathematically you say 2014, and then you know that mathematically 2019, 2020, 2021 would be what we call a bifurcation point, where you would have seen a great spike during
Um,
that time. So if you're saying 2014 and you're saying 1 in 7, then that's a very alarming result for something that took place for 2014, because we know
yeah.
that we had 2019, 2020, 2021, which is a period in Earth history that will have a spike in those figures.
Absolutely. That's such an important point. And you're right, the pandemic has definitely contributed to an increase in the rates of depression that we're seeing across the world. And Jamaica, the statistics was already high, so I can imagine this has probably doubled. But we don't, unfortunately, that statistic is not available to us.
Yes.
So, suicidal thoughts, plan, and attempts are also rising among Black and African American young adults. And we'll get more into suicide later into my presentation. All right, so I just wanted to clarify a distinction here. Depression is different from a depressed mood. A depressed mood state is a symptom of depression. Depression itself is a mental illness, and that can last a long time, whereas a depressed mood that someone report feeling sadness or low mood, and this is fleeting, and this is also a normal reaction to difficult times. So if someone is in a depressed mood state, that does not mean that they have depression. I just wanted to clarify that. So what causes clinical depression? Well, many factors can contribute to depression, including cognitive issues. So people with a negative thinking pattern, like so persons who are pessimistic, always seeing the negative versus reflecting on the positive side of things. Biochemistry, so this is differences in certain chemicals in the brain may contribute to symptoms of depression. And the chemicals that we are speaking to are serotonin and norepinephrine. So for those who are not familiar with those brain chemicals, serotonin is a mood stabilizer that plays a role in our mood or sleep and even our sexual desire, whereas norepinephrine is responsible for the regulation of arousal, so us being alert, attention, cognitive function, and stress reduction. So what research has shown is that lower levels of these two chemicals can contribute to someone's susceptibility in developing depression. Genetics also play a big role. Depression runs in family. So, for example, if one identical twin has depression, the other has a 70% chance of having the illness at some point in their lifetime. In terms of gender, significant differences here. More women experience depression than men. And as you can imagine, this is largely as a result of hormonal changes that women go through during menstruation, during pregnancy, during childbirth and menopause, as well as just the stress from having multiple responsibilities. And then when we think about personality, people with low self esteem, folks who are easily overwhelmed by stress, or those who are just generally pessimistic appear to be more likely to experience depression. Some other contributing factors are environmental or situational factors, so continued exposure to violence, neglect, abuse, or poverty may make some people more vulnerable to depression. Other medications, so when we think about stimulant medications, antidepressant itself, even though it's meant to help depression, during the initial stages, it might make your symptom worse, as well as hormonal contraceptives are contributing factors as well. Other illnesses, such as diabetes, Alzheimer's, multiple sclerosis, and cancer, are all risk factors as well. For some, a number of these factors seem to be involved, while for others, just a single event or a single factor can contribute to someone susceptibility to depression.
Excuse me, Michelle, 1 second. Your slides are not moving. You're still on the initial slide.
Really? Huh.
Yes.
Is it moving now?
No, it's
I see your
not.
mouse.
Huh?
No, it's not moving.
I see your mouse moving, but I don't see your slide moving.
Okay. Any help
Yeah.
as to what I can do
I
to
want
get
to
it
hit
working?
F5 and do that presentation.
Like stop sharing again and start
No, I don't
reshare?
think you need to stop
Yes,
sharing
yes.
because I see your mouse moving. It's just the PowerPoint itself. So if you go ahead and start the slideshow again,
Uh-huh. All right, let me see. Stop sharing. Thank you for letting me know.
not a problem. I thank the listeners in the chat
Oh,
because I had stepped away for a moment. I'm gonna step away again. But
all right.
as you
Can
get
folks see it now? Are you seeing it now, Kevin?
all right. Okay,
There
go
is
ahead and change the slide.
You know,
Seeing it now?
the
I see
Caribbean
it. But go ahead and change the slide.
has to live with a spirituality of the
Changing it.
Caribbean.
Can you see it now?
Yes, I'm seeing it. Are you changing the slides?
I did. I changed it to further causes. Are you seeing that on your
It's on
screen?
further causes, yes. But I want to
Oh,
change it again to see if as you progress, it will continue to
okay.
change.
I changed it again. Did you see myths and facts about depression?
That
no.
means
No,
the
it's still
A,
on further causes. Just go
okay,
ahead and click
and we have
on
reached the Z yet. And we
click
have
on
the
15.
T
What you on? 12? Click on 13.
We even know what the
Can you
season
see
is
that?
and the patterns are unusual
No, it's still saying further
by
causes.
standards. And so in
That's
this season of
frustrating.
hurricanes, in this spirituality of hurricanes,
Okay.
we
Well,
have
we
to
don't want you to get frustrated.
listen.
Just
We have
just
to
go just take the mouse over to
the easy way of
the
human being.
tiles
That's
over on the left side
Uh-huh.
That's how we are
and
human.
just click on them individually.
And the
And
Lord is
let's see if it
reminding us
changes
of our
there. Because I see your mouse moving.
hurricane
Okay.
passes through our area. We recognize we are that's an
All right. So let me know if it continues. Okay, please interrupt me.
that is a spirituality.
Somebody's playing a video in the background.
Not by me at all. Not where I am.
Let's
Okay.
all mute except for Kevin and Michelle.
me.
Okay.
All right. So yeah, if you because I see your mouse moving across your screen
Mm-hmm.
as you had shared.
Okay. So when I'm done with this slide, Kevin, if it's not moving, please let me know.
Well, so tell you what, we'll just look at you and you just present the information because it would be a distraction with it being up. If that's
Okay.
okay with you.
That's okay. So stop sharing is what you're
Yeah, go
suggesting.
ahead and stop sharing, and then we'll just look at you.
Okay. All right. So some people may face unique risk factors for depression, so exposure to racial trauma, difficult life circumstances such as the death of a loved one, financial problems, job loss, divorce, a hurricane like what just happened in Jamaica, racial barriers to access in care, including racism from care providers and mental health stigma. And when Black people develop depression, the condition lasts longer. They may also be more likely to have co occurring diagnoses such as addiction, post traumatic stress disorder, and generalized anxiety disorder. So, what are some myths and facts about depression? Depression is a serious illness. So, like any physical ailment, it requires the right treatment, and finding this can take time. Yet, people with depression routinely encounter myths about the disease. Some of the most common myths include if depression treatment does not work immediately, it will not work. Well, that's not true. Many people need to try several treatments or a combination of techniques in order to get effective results. Medication is the only way to treat depression. That's not true. There are many treatment options, and people who wish to avoid drugs may find relief from therapy itself. People should be strong enough to overcome depression. Well, someone cannot think or pray their way through this condition. Depression changes the brain and our bodies. Why are you depressed? If our people could make it through slavery, we can make it through anything. Well, that's easier said than done. But when a Black woman suffers from a mental disorder, the opinion is that she's weak. And weakness in Black women is intolerable. You should take your troubles to Jesus, not some stranger or psychiatrist. The truth is that getting help is a sign of strength. People with depression can't just snap out of it. And also, even though spiritual support can be an important part of healing, the care of a qualified mental health professional is essential in helping you navigate this journey. Depression is sadness. So while many people with depression feel sad, it can also cause anger, physical pain, and changes in the way that you think. Clinical depression is not a personal weakness. It is a whole mind and body phenomenon. Clinical depression can affect anyone. So anyone can experience clinical depression. That's regardless of your race, your gender, your age, or your income. Clinical depression is more than just life's ups and downs. It is normal for us to feel sad when a loved one dies, or when you are sick, going through a divorce, or having financial problems. But for some people, the sadness does not go away or keeps coming back. Depression is not just the blues. If your blues last more than a few weeks or cause you to struggle with daily life, you may be suffering from clinical depression. Although the prevalence of depression is similar between Black and white communities, suicide rates have greatly increased among Black youth over the past 20 years. This points to an emerging crisis in Black mental health. Black people may develop different symptoms of depression and are less likely to pursue or remain in treatment. Managing depression is essential across all communities. and finding racially sensitive treatment may be more important for Black people who struggle with racial trauma and discrimination. So depression also increases the risk for many types of physical health problems, particularly long-lasting conditions like diabetes, heart disease, and stroke. The presence of chronic conditions can also increase the risk for mental illness. So that speaks to that mind-body connection. So if we're not well in the mind, that can be manifested through physical illness. And when someone has a physical health condition, their minds can be impacted, thus resulting in a mental health condition. So, what are some of the signs and symptoms of depression? Well, we want to look out for a persistent, sad, anxious, or empty mood or excessive crying. So, that's one. Reduced appetite and weight loss, or the reverse, someone having increased appetite and weight gain. Persistent physical symptoms that do not respond to treatment. So, daily headaches, digestive problems, and chronic pain, irritability and restlessness, decreased energy, feeling slowed down or fatigued, feelings of guilt, worthlessness, helplessness, hopelessness, and pessimism, sleeping too much or too little, early morning awakenings, loss of interest or pleasure in activities, including sex, difficulty concentrating, remembering, or making decisions, and thoughts of death or suicide or even suicide attempts. Those are all symptoms of depression. So, children who experience depression are more sensitive to rejection. So, you might notice with the little ones coming to you and reporting physical symptoms such as stomach aches or headaches, and that doesn't respond to treatment. Trouble during events and activities at home or with friends, in school, and with other hobbies or interests, vocal outbursts or crying, and continuous feelings of sadness and just hopelessness. Depressed adults commonly lose large amounts of weight very suddenly. However, with kids, you might see that they are not gaining weight appropriately. So there's a slow rate in their growth curve, or they may be gaining excess weight. A typical adult symptom may include the classic depressed mood. However, in a child or adolescent, you might see more irritability, increased crankiness, or isolative behavior. So they want to stay in their room all day, don't want to hang out with their friends, or even have conversations with you. These are things that you want to be mindful of. Also, with teens, there might be profound sadness with them, a lot of crying spells, more so among girls, irritability or extreme frustration in boys, and anger, feelings of worthlessness, fixating on failures, trouble with concentrating on memory, thoughts of death, dying, or suicide, extreme changes in appetite, self-harming behavior, so cutting, scratching, pinching, as well as unusually poor school performance. So what are some of the things that are protective or that are helpful in us navigating depression? Well, having a strong social support system and a stable community, that could be a church community, a home community, a work community, it doesn't matter as long as you have a stable community with people that you find supportive and feel good around. Emotion regulation skills, so having the capacity to manage intense emotions, cognitive flexibility, the ability to shift sets, a positive attitude, good communication skills, so you're telling people about how you're feeling, you're sociable, you have a lot of friends, you're engaged in meaningful activities, experience of success and achievement, faith or spirituality, the capacity to self-reflect, and also humor can be very helpful in navigating these difficult feelings. So, what do we do when we're treating depression? Well, we have several treatment options, including counseling or psychotherapy, medication. There are also herbal supplements or other things that are culturally relevant that people use to help treat depression. So a mental health professional can work with you to design a treatment plan that best fits your individual needs. And faith and spirituality can be a part of your healing from depression. Lifestyle changes can also be helpful. Many people with depression find that more exercise, healthful changes in diet, and quality sleep can help. Alternative therapies, so some people find additional support from acupuncture, meditation, and other alternative remedies. How can we be a friend or reach out to someone who may be struggling with depression? Well, we could say something like, I've been worried about you. How are you really? I've noticed some changes in you lately and I wanted to check in with you. Or something like, it sounds like you're having a tough time. It must be really hard to try to hold everything together when you're feeling this bad. When did you start feeling like this? Did something happen that started it? Or even saying to them, I understand. How can I help you to find help? Feeling depressed isn't a sign of weakness. It takes courage for people to speak up. We don't want to make people regret opening up to us and sharing their deepest feelings. So we don't want to say something like, oh, it's all in your head, or you're just having a bad day. I'm sure it's nothing to worry about. Or, man up, you can deal with this on your own. Why are you talking about this stuff? You don't want people to think you're crazy, right? What will your family say? We don't want to be off-putting, so we want to honor people's vulnerability and be a support to them instead of being um, a distraction or even be invalidating. So we want to check in with ourselves. So for those of us who might be experiencing some of these symptoms that I highlighted, you want to do a basic check-in each day. Did I shower? Did I brush my teeth? You can go for a walk. You can drink water. Ensure that you're taking your vitamins and eating healthily to the best that you can, given you the resources that you have available to you. You want to talk to someone. You can also write some things down that you are thankful or grateful for. And you want to pick an affirmation for the day. So maybe something like, it's going to be a great day, or I got this, it's hard and I'll get through it. So moving on from depression into something a little deeper, and this is where I really would encourage folks to take care of themselves, because this is something that may have touched your lives in some way or another. And this is the topic of suicide. Suicide is death caused by injuring oneself with the intent to die. A suicide attempt is when someone harms themselves with any intention to end their life, but they do not die as a result of their action. Suicide affects people of all ages. People who have experienced violence, including child abuse, more so sexual abuse, bullying, or sexual violence, have a higher suicide risk. Suicide and suicide attempts can cause serious emotional, physical, and economic impacts. And people who attempt suicide and survive may experience serious injuries that can have long-term effects on their health. And they may also experience depression and other mental health concerns. So what are some of the risk factors or conditions that increases the chance that a person may take their own life? Mental health conditions including depression, substance use problems, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, personality traits of aggression, mood changes and poor relationships, conduct disorders, and anxiety disorders. Those are mental health conditions that predisposes someone to suicidality. Serious physical health conditions including pain, So chronic pain, for those who don't know, is highly correlated with suicidality. Likewise, traumatic brain injury. Some other risk factors that are environmental in nature: having access to lethal means such as firearms and drugs, prolonged stress such as harassment, bullying, relationship problems, or even unemployment, stressful life events like rejection, divorce, financial crisis, other life transitions or loss, exposure to another person's suicide, or to graphic, sensationalized accounts of suicide. So we refer to this as suicide contagion, having exposure to that. So a number of your friends probably dying by suicide or people that you are close with. Historical, so people who have had previous suicide attempts have a greater risk. A family history of suicide is also something that we're always listening out for. And childhood abuse, neglect, or trauma are all risk factors for suicidality. And some of the warning signs for suicide. So, what are we looking out for folks who we are concerned about who may be suicidal? We're looking for a change in behavior or the presence of entirely new behaviors. So if a person starts talking about killing themselves, that's not something we want to take for granted. We want to take that seriously. Someone who reports feeling hopeless or having no reason to live, being a burden to others, feeling trapped, or having unbearable pain. So this is where the chronic pain, the chronic condition, chronic pain that I talked about earlier becomes relevant too, because someone who experiences chronic pain can find that pain so unbearable they now consider suicide as the only way out. Some behavioral warning signs that we want to look out for: increased use of alcohol or drugs, someone looking for a way to end their life, such as searching up methods online, withdrawing from activities. So, someone who was very actively involved in a variety of events, all of a sudden you notice they're pulling back from these events one by one, isolating from family and friends, sleeping too much or too little, visiting or calling people to say goodbye, giving away prized possessions, someone who is all of a sudden just so aggressive, or even who presents as being very fatigued. Those are behavioral warning signs that are relevant in pinpointing risk factors. In terms of mood, we want to monitor someone who is depressed. Anyone who struggles with depression, we're always screening for suicidal ideation. Anxiety can also lead to suicidality, loss of interest, irritability, humiliation or shame, agitation, anger, a relief, or just someone who was not feeling so well or doing so well, and all of a sudden they've improved significantly. We refer to those as the flight to health. So, in looking at some statistics, 5.2% of US adults reported suicidal thinking. That equates to 13.2 million folks. Of this 5.2%, 1.5% has made suicidal plans, which is 3.8 million people, while 0.6% or 1.6 million have attempted suicide. Moving over to youth statistics, this is for youths between the ages of 12 to 17 years old. 13.4% of youths in the US reported having suicidal thoughts, or 3.4 million youth between this age group. 6.5% made suicidal plans, while 3.7% attempted suicide, or 953,000. And the most commonly used methods are firearms, suffocation, and drug poisoning. And so when we think about Jamaica's statistic, I wish I could share my screen, or Wilfred, you might have to share this so I can review together with folks. When we look at Jamaica statistics for the years 2016 to 2023, males
Go ahead
died
and put
by
it up. Go
suicide.
ahead.
Yeah, we'll put it up, Michelle. Mr. James,
Okay,
can you mute, please? I think we're getting our sound somewhere you are.
okay, thanks, Wilfred. So when we look at this statistic, we see that males die by suicide at a higher rate than females, right? So and we know this some consistency between 2022 and 2023. That rate is very very similar, just by one difference. And look at the rate for females, way lower than males. No
Go ahead.
surprises here.
Share it. Share it. Share it. Let us see it, Mr. Michelle.
Just give me 1 second. I hope this works.
If it's,
All
if it's not,
right.
Kevin, I can send it to you.
Please tell me it's working. Can folks see that?
Not yet.
All right, hold on a second.
Oh, you have it, Will?
Yeah, I'll send it. I'm sending it to you right now.
No, just go ahead and just open it. Just open it.
So you're still not seeing it from my end?
Well, I'm not seeing what you're sharing. No.
Oh, come on.
Here, Kevin.
Not. We have solutions around here. We have a myriad of solutions.
Right, Kevin.
But go ahead. Go ahead, Michelle.
Okay. All right. So based on
my side.
So based on just the research that we have available to us in the suicide world, females oftentimes attempt at a higher rate than males. However, in terms of suicide completion, males oftentimes complete suicide at a way higher rate than females. And that's what we're seeing here within the statistics that's available to us from Jamaica. So the females, and that has increased. So 5 in 2016, and now with 2023, 10. So that has doubled over those 7 years. Whereas males, that rate remains steady, but it's increasing, however. And so that's very concerning for us. Really, really concerning. And men usually use more lethal means, which is why they complete suicide at a higher rate than females.
If I may steal some of your thunder, Michelle.
Okay.
The while Kevin is trying to put it up, the rates, it shows that from 2016 to 2023, over that period, 47 females committed suicide in Jamaica. And in that same period, 354 men committed suicide. So like you're saying, it's way.
Yeah. So males are disproportionately affected. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
So folks, that's what we're talking about for folks who are on with us today. And so there's cause for concern. All right. And so what can we do to help this situation? Well, we can increase access to mental health care and be proactive about mental health, like we're doing now, talking about it so people are aware of these mental health conditions, the protective factors, the risk factors. We can try to work on increasing connection to family and community support, work on improving people's problem solving and coping skills, limiting access to lethal means, and so tighter gun control Mr. Rattigan can speak to that later on. Cultural and religious beliefs that encourage connecting and help seeking discourages suicidal behavior, or we can help to create a strong sense of self and self-esteem and purpose, right? When we have something that we are aspiring towards, when we find things that are meaningful in life, and so there's a purpose, then that enhances one's willingness or desire to live. So what can we do? Some action steps that we can take if we notice that someone is presenting as if they're at risk for suicide, or if they have intention or a plan that, hey, this is it, I'm done. We can ask, are you thinking about killing yourself? And research has shown that this direct language does not encourage someone to go through with the behavior. In fact, it's encouraged. Keep them safe by reducing access to lethal items or places. So if you know someone has tried harming themselves using a rope, if you notice certain behaviors, then you want to hide that rope, hide all sharp objects in the home. If you have firearms present, you would want to lock those away. So you want to secure those. Anything that can be used to hurt someone, those are things that you want to procure. You want to help them connect with people, so calling or texting the suicide crisis line here in the United States. That number is 988. Jamaica doesn't have that number, but Jamaica does have resources. And you want to stay connected with these people as well. So you don't want to just check in on someone and that's it. You want to keep a close eye on them. So if you're in Jamaica, the mental health suicide prevention helpline is available. That number is 888-639-5433. Again, that's 888-639-5433. I cannot speak to the effectiveness of this line. I do hope it works as it's intended to. The Ministry of Health and Wellness also offers counseling appointment, free counseling session. If you go on their web page, you can schedule an appointment. And if you're super concerned, you can also contact the police at 119, and the police will ask you to provide as much information as possible. So you want to keep the person talking if you notice that someone is at risk for suicidality. And so this is where I will stop talking and I will respond to any questions, comments, concerns, clarification, or whatever it is that folks have.
Mimis,
Yep. The phone line is open, but Kevin have the first dibs. Kevin, go ahead.
Mimis.
You can move that, Kevin. You can move the
Yeah. Let me get rid of this first. All right. So the person who is talking about suicide. Didn't I just remove this?
Mm-hmm.
How do you differentiate from the person who is looking at tension from the person who is really considering suicide?
Well, guess what? We take both of those things seriously, right? Because it's the same concern that they're expressing. It doesn't matter if someone is doing it for attention. We want to let people know that if you mention suicide to me, I am going to take it very seriously.
Got you. And a question was asked in the chat. Have you ever heard of psychiatrists' death industries?
Psychiatrist death industries?
Yes.
No, I've never heard of that before.
Me neither. So, Ronald, if you have a link, I'll gladly accept it. Thank you, please and thanks.
Somebody you mentioned, Michelle, you had mentioned something about calling the police, and Andrea pointed this out, and it happened recently that a woman who obviously had some mental issues went to the police, or she was in their custody, their care and custody, and she committed suicide. And people are asking, how could this be possible? She came to you and she had a mental episode, and then you put her in a place, and I think she hung herself.
Well,
Yeah.
They were saying maybe that's not the place to go. But I have a question. Quite often we see where preachers, they get up on the soapbox and they said, "Bring your problems to Jesus, whatever it is. He will cure. He's the miracle work and all this stuff." But I thought I heard you say that that's clinically that's not an answer to the problem. That a preacher cannot cure you of depression by just saying, "Come to church and be religious, and Jesus will take away your problem." Can you clarify that for people who are listening out there who are extremely religious and they believe that whatever problems they have, that they can go to church and it can be addressed?
Absolutely, because depression, it's not just uh, a problem. It's not something you can say, "Hey, get over it. It's okay," right? Because of all the different factors that are at play in depression. When we think about even our brain chemicals, right? Those lower than normal serotonin or norepinephrine levels that are implicated in someone who struggles with depression. A pastor saying, "Oh, tell it to Jesus and it will be okay." I'm not sure life works like that. So while spirituality or faith can be a protective factor, right, that provides a source of strength, a source of community with someone going through depression, and that can be helpful at the same time, that in itself cannot cure someone's depression.
Uh, Defense mechanisms. Talk to me about that, because if people come up with defense mechanisms and they said, "Yes, this will work and this is how I deal with it, and I've gotten over it," whether it's church, whether it's a community, whatever it is that they've chosen to do to get over their depression, how does is there a place in the treatment regimen where defense mechanism can play a role?
Absolutely, but not in the way that you would like to hear though. Defense mechanism, that's like you masking whatever it is that's bothering you, right? We see that a lot. Freud speaks to it in the context of anxiety, right? So that's masking your anxiety about whatever it is that you are struggling with. So yes, people use defense mechanism. People use numbing a lot when we think about psychological pain. And while that's serving a purpose in the short term, it feels like your symptoms have been resolved. Over time, however, it builds up and it gets worse. So it does help in the short term, but when we think about the effectiveness in the long term, that doesn't help because you're not solving your problem, right? You are avoiding your problem. So it's more of an avoidance coping strategy more than an effective coping strategy.
Here we have Kerry Bless. She says, "Jesus can heal you from any and every problem if you have the right person of God who is anointed to do that." So Kerry believes that contrary to what you're saying, I guess what I'm trying to say is, does it work? Because what you're saying, even though it's scientific, it doesn't work for every person, right? Because would you agree with that? That with some people, defense mechanisms will work for them. It's in general it won't, because it's a short-term fix. But for some people, you would agree that this would work for them, pretty much like what Kerry is saying, that for Kerry's purposes, it might, this might very well be her case where she said, "Look, whatever problems I have, I just go see my anointed person and I'm fine."
Mm-hmm.
How do you provide for that in your world, where you have the exceptional person, where all the things you're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
symptoms, they have the symptoms, but they also have the cure, which is not treatment as you are specifying? How do you account for those people?
Well, I think several factors play a role, right? When we think about individual characteristics, so someone's personality, which I talked about, someone who is optimistic about life, no matter what, even if they're going through the worst, they know that a better day is coming. Integrating faith into this conversation, someone who has deep faith, right, will think that no matter what I go through, it's going to work out. So if someone gravitates to that optimistic coping style, right, on that way of thinking, that in itself is a protective factor in terms of mitigating depression. So I can see why someone would feel better in terms of implementing that way of thinking, and even those beliefs or the things that they're doing, having that sense of connection to. So I think it depends on the protective factors that we have available to us. Individual characteristics, so someone who is resilient, someone who is optimistic, and things along that line, that in itself can be helpful in managing the depression effectively. I hope that answers your question adequately.
Kevin?
Oh yeah. Listening to that, all I can think of is the person who is spiritual, well, religious, that says, God answers prayer and gives you solutions to all problems. Well, here is a solution being given to you by God. It's like the man that's on the roof that praying to God for help in the flood, and the water is up to just the rafters, and where he's at the peak of the roof crying for help me, Jesus, help me, God. And a guy comes by on a boat, a guy comes by in a canoe, he takes none of them, and then the roof goes and he drowns. And he asks, God, why didn't you help me? And I sent help. When he gets to heaven, he asks the question, why didn't you? I sent help, you didn't take it. So people who are religious and they go to their spiritual advisors and think take heed, God helps those who help themselves. So when help comes along in the form of a therapist, I think you should take it. Now, for you as a professional in that field, when you come across someone who needs the help, and this is the position that they take, how then do you manage that situation?
So this person, so just so I have this right, this person is coming in to see me, right? And they have this mindset.
Well, they wouldn't be coming to see if they have that mindset. Look at this person.
Well, we just gotta respect folks, folks' perspective on things, right? And I'm a religious person too, so I hope folks who are listening don't think otherwise. I am too, and I believe in God. And when we think about how we treat depression using cognitive behavioral therapy, which is the gold standard treatment for depression, that therapeutic intervention talks about how someone think impacts how they feel and the things that they do. And while you were sharing your speech just now, it made me think about that. Like how someone thinks, right? So I'm thinking that God will help me. This is it. I'm going to get through this. That's going to impact how you feel. So you're going to feel a little more hopeful, a little more optimistic. And that ultimately impacts the things that you do. You're going to find the courage to push along, go to work, do all these things that you have to do. So somebody seeing you is not going to notice depression or suspect depression, right? We do have people who are mildly depressed, moderately depressed, who are quite functional in life. And then just going back to your question, in with people who hold on to that philosophy, I love to provide information, right? So when I think about advocacy, where mental health literacy is the avenue that I take with advocacy. And so my job is to provide the information and try to meet people as best where they're at. And if someone is just not budging a muscle to believe in therapy, then that's okay. But as long as they have the information, they know what they're looking out for, and are able to recognize when something is just not going okay, then they can seek support, whether that's from a pastor, whether that's from another church person, because those can also be helpful in terms of protecting the person from, perhaps developing depression, severe depression, right? So it's still helpful, and we just got to be respectful of others' perspective and viewpoints.
Hold on 1 second, Michelle. We have a caller. Caller, welcome to Reasons Rattigan. Good night. Where are you calling from? Or good evening?
I'm calling from Brooklyn, New York, Mr. Rattigan and Company.
Okay, welcome.
I'm a licensed clinical social worker. So I'm a mental health professional like Dr. Codner.
Yes.
I would ask her if she could just touch on the cutters. people that cut themselves, they're not suicidal. They're not necessarily suicidal, but they cut through this pressure because of anger. Sometimes they accidentally cut too deep and they end up dying, so they believe it's being suicidal, but they're not. So I would just educate the public. I asked her if she could maybe elaborate on that so other people can get the knowledge.
All right.
Also, the gentleman who said, want to know about the people who do this just for attention. As professionals, it's not attention first. We have to take it serious. And that's, hearing his question, I said it's important she could mention that because there may be someone who's cutting when they get angry. And when they really cut too deep by accident, they end up dying. So I just wanted to share that with you.
All right. Thank you so much for your call.
You're welcome. Thanks for taking my call. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Point well taken. So what she's talking about is the non-suicidal self-injurious behaviors. So that's where we see people cut as their way of regulating their emotions. So someone might be very depressed, right, and just doesn't know how to cope with the depression and resort to self-harming behaviors as their way. Sometimes people with trauma too will engage in cutting because they're like, I'm numb, I want to feel something. And so we do screen for those as well. When we talk about intent, so did someone have the intention to die? So we're always screening for that. The method that someone is using, we're always wanting to be aware of that as well. And so, yes, non-suicidal self-injury, we do screen that out as well.
Herb?
Yeah. Dr. Codner, I just wanted to remind the person who commented earlier and that Kevin answered. We always refer back to James chapter 2, I think verse, some Bibles have it as 18, some 26, but it talks about Paul's teaching on salvation by grace alone, and the comment is faith without works is dead, right? So you can have all the faith in the world, but if you don't get up off your backside and try to help yourself, you're not going to get any results, any good results. And this is what a lot of people fail to do. They will pray and pray and pray and do very little to help themselves, thinking that some magic is going to happen. Somebody's going to wave a magic wand and it's going to change things. And it does not. Now, earlier, Mr. Rattigan made a comment about the lady who died in police custody, right? And I remember the death of a comedian. It was a Hispanic comedian, very popular one. And it turned out that he would not commit suicide until he was with somebody that he felt comfortable with. And then he went ahead and did it. He tried it on his own, by himself, and it didn't work. But when he was with a friend, he was successful. This happened back. I think he was on Red Fox show or one of these other shows. I'm trying to
remember the name. I know the guy you're talking.
Yeah, Freddie. I think it's Freddie.
Freddie Prinze.
Freddie Prinze. Yes, Freddie Prinze. And so when I see that people are trying to hurt themselves, coming from the military background, people don't want to go into combat. So they get so fearful, they kill themselves. But if you went into combat, you didn't want that death. You didn't want a bullet. You didn't want anything to rip you apart or blow you up. But you took your life anyway. So these are some of the strange phenomena that we experience in life, and we see it amongst our friends who take their lives, and we're wondering, well, what happened? Like the guy who owned Golden Cross Patty franchise in New York. Everybody sat back and said, why would the most successful patty franchise in the country, why would he, and he's just expanded his operation to some 70 acres in New York, outside of the city. Why would he take his life? You know, nobody seems to know. So all of these things that I'm talking about is the unknown in people. It could be small things, or it could be very large issues that they're having. How do you examine all of that without being too intrusive into somebody's personal life? How do you identify the problems, especially in Jamaica, all right, amongst Jamaicans? How do you identify these issues in order to save a life?
Well, it goes back to some of those warning signs that I spoke about earlier, right? Noticing someone who was previously engaged in a lot of activities just all of a sudden started isolating or becoming withdrawn, not wanting to pick up a phone call or talking about, giving away possession. Oh, I'm going to give away this. So we want to be alert and attentive to those behavioral cues, those mood changes, right? And having open conversations with people. That's what that's what it takes for us to figure out that something is just not okay, and checking in with the person. It might feel intrusive, and I understand that, but it's better for us to ask and be aware of things than just sit there and watch things go by, and then when someone dies, then we're thinking, oh, if only I did this. So that's our best indicator. Suicide, there's a theory, the collaborative assessment model of suicide, that by Dr. David Jobs. He postulates suicide as an option. Because if we think about it, suicide can be an option for any of us, right? But what can we do to make it a less appealing option for those persons who are already at risk for suicidality, just based on the cards that life has dealt them, right? And so that's always an option. But these are some things that we can encourage, or these are ways in which we can support people to discourage them from having that as an option that they want to engage with.
The struggle that I see and have always seen since leaving out of Jamaica as it relates to mental health is the stigma. We looked at statistics just now of more men committing suicide in Jamaica than women. And we have to ask, well, I have to ask the question, how do we even make a dent in this? How do we get people to understand that when you talk about health, is the overall, the physical, mental, spiritual. Even if you're not into the spiritual thing, the mental and the physical still there. How do we get it across to the wider population that, hey, this is something that needs to be talked about. This is something that we actually need to sit with our children to let them know that it is okay to not be okay. How do we have that dialogue? Because it seems like in Jamaica, it doesn't seem like it's a thing that can be done.
I challenge you, Kevin, it can be done. The question is, do we want to get it done? And that starts with leadership. Public awareness, if we're thinking about systems of care, it starts with public awareness. we've got to talk about mental health in every space that we can, right? Even the Prime Minister coming in, trying to normalize mental health as an integral component of well-being, that might be a helpful place to start, right? Kids are hearing the leader of our country reference mental health. This becomes not just a joke or something that, oh, that person is a madman or whatever, recognizing that these issues are real and people are struggling. So it starts with public awareness. Churches can also help with that. Schools can help with that. Community awareness is also another component that if we're thinking about a system of care and how we can create this change. Clinical care, training more persons in the country, offering scholarships and things like that. So mental health can be an attractive measure for people to pursue psychology and social work degrees. So I don't think there's nothing that we can't do. I think there's a lot that we can do, but the question is, are we willing to do that? Are we willing to do it? Are we taking these numbers seriously? Is the Prime Minister even aware of the suicide data? That's our data point.
Michelle, before I bring in Richard, because I know him probably want to ask a question. I've been waiting a long time. Now, Beryl just caused massive destruction on the southern coast of Jamaica, right? St. Louis, Clarendon, Manchester, few other towns, right? Some of those people, you'd have to assume that they're depressed. Some of those people, you have to assume that they were depressed already, right? So it's like more upon top of them. And they don't have, hold on 1 second. And they don't have access to the type of treatment and therapy that you're talking about. And it's not like they can go to a community because it's the whole community feeling it. What is your advice to a community, not a person, but a community like that?
In terms of what's happening in St. Elizabeth right now,
Yeah, the people who were depressed, and then this is on top of prior depression, and now they don't have it. They don't see any help coming to them. They don't have a community that they can go to because everyone in that community is suffering. What do you say to them?
there's power in numbers. I think fostering a sense of connection among each other is going to be really helpful right now. Because looking out is not necessarily the most effective strategy right now, but it's more relying on folks within who you have access to. Staying connected to each other, checking in, um, trying to share resources as best as possible, and just trying to be there for each other, being present. That's the very least that I can offer to those folks right now.
Well, I have to tell my sister and the rest of the
But,
relatives.
but you see, Michelle, here the problem with the stigma in Jamaica has been there forever, and people fear mentally ill people,
Hmm.
right? Because we always call them a madman or a madwoman, when in fact they could be having problems that does not make them dangerous at all. But we see where sometimes they get taunted,
Hold on.
sometimes they may even get stoned. You
Hold on a
know,
second. We have a caller been waiting for a while. Sorry to interrupt you, folks. Caller, go ahead, please. You're live on Reason Different. Where are you calling
Yeah,
from?
hi. I'm from Brooklyn. I'm from Brooklyn.
Okay.
I wanted to add that that mental health should be on the list of priority. And I'm anxious and I'm waiting for us to get a competent, functioning government in Jamaica. When you understand that mental health treatment is as important as preparing for the CXC and all the other exams that students have to take, that the mental health should be given that priority
Mm-hmm.
and providers be there. So education will be the first part, the first key to start.
Hello? Hello? Hello?
Caller, did you leave? Did she leave?
Caller, welcome to Rattigan.
Did we lose her? Rattigan?
It's listening to you, so I don't want to take up your time. What I have to say is this. A lot of us Jamaicans, we're not going to do anywhere with mental health because some of us work too proud. I have the same issue going on in my family. It's a long story. I just want to, tell you a little thing. The reason why I said we're not going to get very far with mental health issues. I have a family member. She had a son. The son comes to America like the 2nd of July that just passed 2 years. This child wasn't living with the mom. I was living with my grandma. But I see where the child is traumatized. A lot of issue. He came here last in New York here to spend summer with me last year. And he would just stay in his room. He would just, when I call him for breakfast or whatever, he would come up. But once he ate, he just go back to the room. I spoke to mom about it. Child live in Florida. He doesn't go to school. Like sometime 2 or 3 times for the month. There's so many red flags showing up there. Anyway, the child service got involved. The husband mistreated, ill-treat him. The last time this happened, where the husband put the gun in his face, was the 27th of May. I called the police. I said in New York, call the police. I get involved. You know what my family do? They turn around and I am the person who prosecuted. I am the person. So I'm trying to help them, but you turn around and I'm the person who is against her. So it doesn't matter what help I try to, reach out or whatever. I saved that child life because the husband grabbed him, threw him in the wall, put his knee in his head, put the gun in his face. I didn't even know about the gun, but the child, when the police got there, she told the police what happened. And you know what? He sent the child to New York here with some family member. Service got involved, whatever. They're trying to help her. Every thing that they try to help her with, because the husband cannot be around, the husband is still incarcerated, but he has to come back home. They try to give her a house, they try to give her place for the check, we turn it down. So some of us, we're not going to get very far because we're too proud. You know what she told me? I brought her for her husband because her husband have good insurance, her husband have, that doesn't even come across my mind. But I'm talking about the child. So most of us, we will never get far until we accept our situation. That's just my opinion.
All right. Thank you for expressing.
Thank you very much for listening.
All right, Chico.
That person sounds like she need treatment for Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah, Michelle. What do you think about that? What you just said. When you try to help, then you get ostracized as being the bad guy.
Unfortunately, we see that a lot in my work. I see that a lot in my work, more so working with immigrant families, where you make lots of recommendations and parents are opposed to it, or kids are reporting suicidal ideation and you're concerned about it. And I spoke to a Haitian mom once, and this mom literally almost rebuked me, say, hey, my child is not suicidal, blah, 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 even though we gave the child a PHQ-9, which is the patient health questionnaire, and that's a depression screen about screens for suicidality. And the kid reported positive suicidal thoughts, and so that prompted a mental health provider to go and check in. And the mom was just so outraged by us checking in on her child. And that required me having a conversation with her, normalizing that I know mental health is not something that we talk about in the Caribbean. But guess what? You just have to go listen because the kid is reporting these things and it's very serious. Eventually, she came alongside and was okay, but still upset at the hospital for screening her child. In situations like that, there's only so much and so little we can do with the families because we cannot pull their arms and force them into treatment, right? That's not something that we can do as providers. However, if we consider it hinging on the border of abuse, then as a mandated reporter, I have to report that and the state will step in and provide the help that the child needs. So that's a way in which we navigate it as well. Like if it's concerning, if it's abuse, this child really needs treatment, and the parents are getting in the way of that, or we suspect that there's abuse in the home, then that's one of the things that we rely on, our mandated reporting capacity.
All right. Richard, jump
Yes.
in because waiting quite a while, and we have a couple more topics. I think we'll only do one more topic because we're ending promptly at 8 o'clock. So Kevin has to go, and I have to go, and Herb has to go, and Michelle has to go, and I'm sure you have to go. So, jump in, Richard.
Okay, concerning the mental health issue, depression, suicide, I just want to talk a little bit about my own experience as somebody is an educator.
You suffer from those things?
Well, no, no, you might be surprised.
No,
No.
I'm just teasing. Go ahead, sir.
All right. Okay, concern, because let's just give you a scenario. I was in my class one day and a student said to me, Mr. James, may I speak to you outside a little bit? And I said, okay. I went outside and she said to me, Mr. James, would you go on a date with me? I said, of course. Why not? And I said, of course. Why not?
Hold on. Well, a student asked you to go out on a date, and if you would, and you said yes.
Yes, quickly, not even half a second. Yeah, and I said, this is what you do. When you go home, let's speak to your mother about it, and then when she says yes, then we will go on the date. But I know that she was not interested in any date. She was just, I think that she just felt rejected by all of her peers. And then you're probably just thinking that maybe something is wrong with me, and if Mr. James would just put the icing on my cake, then probably she would go and commit suicide. And that is what I was just thinking, why I said that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that on that occasion, I averted the entire thing. And I was also teaching at another private institution, and every time I go to class, like if I'm there for a half an hour before, there's a student who is always coming up to me, walking up behind me, and styling my hair and doing all different kind of fancy, maybe not fancy stuff with my hair. And the principal or somebody else in the administration would come and say, leave Mr. James alone. And I used to say, no man, just let's let her. I like the styling and everything. But if you see what my head looked like after the entire thing, then you would imagine how somebody would like that. But I was aware that that kind of person may be feeling a sense of alienation, maybe in the family, maybe in the school, and maybe such and such. And I know that if I brush her off all the time, it might be something detrimental. As a matter of fact, when I stopped teaching at the institution, and maybe a year and a half or 2-3 years later, 2 of the students there committed suicide.
Let me ask Michelle. What do you think about this? I'm processing what Richard said, and what I'm thinking is that obviously based on what he's saying, that the young lady, at least in the first instance, there were some issues there, and should you be concerned that students come up to a teacher and the teacher says yes, and then the student will report it, considering that if the student is mentally unstable, for example, could mention it that, hey, this teacher is hitting on me, and that could spell trouble for the teacher. How would you handle it? I guess the question I'm asking is for Mr. James. How would you have handled that, where the student come up and say, hey, or the student want to play with your locks, or how would you handle it?
I would approach it with respectful curiosity, right? So first finding out, what comes to mind for you when you talk about a date, right? So you want to gain clarity as to what exactly this child is asking for. Because my fear is, and not to be critical of your style, but my fear is that you agree, it's a date and this child, as Mr. Rattigan is asking, rightfully so, doesn't have the cognitive capacity to discern that, okay, this is my teacher, I'm a student, and this is not like a date in a sexual manner or whatever that is. Right? So we want to make sure that we are understanding our students' needs, clarifying what they're asking for. So I would start there, figuring out what a date looks like for them. Where is this coming from? And even the here, curiosity, what is it about the hair. What's driving that behavior? Why do you want to comb my hair? Like figuring out the why behind the child's intention, but not in a shaming way. You know, it's nice that you like my hair on a plate. I'm just curious about why, you know, what it would mean for you to give me a hairstyle or whatever. So you're not shaming them, but you're leaning into their curiosity and you are respecting their wishes or whatever, but you're also not indulging or promoting those inappropriate questions or behavior.
Yeah,
Mr. James?
yeah, that's an excellent answer, I think. You understand? Yes. However, as I said before, I am not an expert. It is just that I was able to detect something like that. I'm going to give you another scenario. I was at a particular school, and a boy at the school spoke to his chemistry teacher and said, listen, my dog is extremely sick. Right? My dog is extremely sick. So I'd want you to give me some substance to put my dog to sleep. No, it might come across as a joke now to us, but something very serious.
Mm-hmm.
If the teacher gave him extremely concentrated sodium chloride.
It's crazy.
So no. He did not imagine that would do with the dog anything, you know, because he knew that it would not harm the dog. But the teacher also knew that it would not harm him. So the teacher already figured out that is his motive. That was his motive for asking the teacher such a question. So we have, I guess we could have caused this number to be a lot smaller if in some way we could do it in a professional way, be our brother's keeper as it pertains to, you know, the suicidal tendencies of the youngsters.
Mm-hmm.
You have a lot of information and you have given us a very comprehensive lesson concerning the entire thing. Well, for the part of it that I was able to see, because, you know, on two occasions I did not have power. But I'm saying, based on what I've learned and I've understood. But some of us who are not professionals, we do not understand. But I could understand somebody that someone is actually suicidal. And I saw that, especially in the girl who asked me to go out on a date, because I know that the girl didn't want to go out on a date with me, I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
of that. But I think that, and if I hesitated or somehow, no, I don't think so, maybe not, then her motive for asking me, I assess that as being she feels rejected by her peers. And I think that maybe I was the last person that she would go to see if there's something really wrong with her and that everyone would treat her just the same.
Mm-hmm.
I think that to her, I was the last straw for the moment. And that is why I quickly said yes. Because I thought that if I said no, or I hesitated, or I showed any form of resentment, then by the time the class is over, I maybe not return to class the next day.
Yeah, you would have been like another adult who rejected her. I see where you're coming from, and good for you in picking up on those cues, right? One thing that I'm thinking about is how can we train teachers just across the country to be aware of these warning signs and behaviors that teens or school children are engaging in, because the rate for suicidality between that 12 to 17-year-old gap, that's very, very concerning and extremely high. That has moved from the fifth cause, suicide has moved up from the fifth leading cause of death within that age group to the third cause. So we are facing a crisis, not just in Jamaica, but across the world. But given that, you know, that's my country of birth, I'm very concerned about things there.
Yes. Oh,
You
one
know,
other
it's
thing. Yes. I used to go up to the, what's it, what they call it? The psychiatric ward. Yes,
Up by
and I,
UE,
repeat that?
up by UE Hospital.
No, not UA. The one at Cornwall.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Yes, the one at Cornwall Regional. I used to go up there with my violin and I used to play for them. And a few years later, I was approached by somebody who was at the ward. And the person said to me, "Do you know that I was at the psychiatric ward and you came with the violin, and as soon as you started playing the violin, all of my thoughts start to make a lot of sense, and I start to regain my whole, you know, I start to recover from this mental attitude and all of that. So, you know, at least that did something for at least one of them. So I'm just wondering if that could be a therapy for someone who is mentally ill also.
Oh, absolutely. Music therapy. Yeah. Go for it.
Right. Alright. Thanks.
You're
So
welcome.
a couple of comments here, Richard. It's a good thing that you're in Jamaica. I commend you for recognizing those things. If you were in the United States, you'd probably not be teaching ever again and trying to explain your position in court. It's really a very fine line, and you whereas you managed to possibly diffuse some very serious situations very well. Training is very important, like Michelle just said, and probably because of the position that is taken in Jamaica as it relates to mental health. And I don't know. Another thing is, somebody mentioned it in the chat too. Those were especially the girl coming to you asking if you'd go to a date. It's like open door invitation to someone who would take advantage of children. You know, that's like, yeah, let me at it, scrappy do kind of a thing. And so again, good for you that you managed to, one, maintain your job, two, possibly save someone's life. But I would suggest bringing someone else in the future. I don't know how the rest of the story go because there's more to the story, I'm pretty sure. For the teacher, the chemistry teacher that gave the chemical, you know, right away, again, jail, court, no longer teaching, because it's not the thing to do, even if it's harmless to the individual. No, get them water, get them salt water, saline solution, tell them that there's something else, put in a bottle, and then go to somebody else. Now we need to get the rest of the story. What else was done after that? And so, whereas I get that you possibly contracted the story for the purpose of bringing the point across, I think it's important that we get full context, because it could send up flags, you know, and so this is where Michelle talking about training being important comes in. I worked at the Salvation Army for 7 years myself in 2 states, and the level of training I got in one state had me training everybody that came to work at the Salvation. I was in a community center, training everybody there on something called safe from harm. And so when I hear a story like that, it my all my antennas go up, and here come the questions, you know. And I see Michelle over there being diplomatic about it and saying, hey, you know, good for you, right? But right here, she's one of the first going, hey, 911.
Malpractice liability.
We'll have a conversation over here because you're a mandated reporter at this point. And so, again, not discrediting anything that you did, Richard. Kudos to you, actually, for recognizing it. But the rest of it needs to happen too. The call to the parent, the report to the principal, the whatever else that would come now to make sure to protect you and that child.
Yes.
And just to add as well, Kevin, getting the guidance counselor involved. I didn't hear any mention of guidance counselor being consulted either. So that's another presence that we'd want to be a part of this equation. Because again, kid is coming to you, right? You want to make sure that you are providing the support that this child needs.
Oh, the music thing, Richard.
Yes.
I've been a musician since I was 10, against my will, but still. I for years, prisons, nursing homes, hospitals, children's homes, you name it, I've played music there. And so you told that story about doing it down at Cornwall Regional. Big props to you, because music, when I say music to savage beast, it does. And I know many people that music has saved their life. So yes, sir. Kudos to you on that too.
Okay, thanks.
Michelle, what is Jamaica doing about the woeful disparity in the what we call the country parts, with the like here in the US, 13 psychiatrists per 100,000. In Jamaica, it's 1 per 100,000, and all of them seem to be concentrated in Kingston and St. Andrew. What are they doing? Do you know what they're doing to assist the people who most naturally, after a natural disaster like Beryl or other disasters, may need some mental health counseling?
That's true. Up here, we would provide psychological first aid. I don't know if that's something that Jamaica does, but when an entire community suffers a traumatic event, then psychological first aid is usually support that is provided. I don't know if that's in place. And actually, with the whole psychiatrist, it's less than one. I was looking at that percentage. I think it's maybe 0.5% actually per 100,000, so not even a full one person.
Wow.
It's really bad. So I would like to think that we have some replication of psychological first aid being offered in these communities, because that's a very, very important resource for countries to have in place. I am not sure if anyone from the United States has, gone there, because we do have psychological first aid respondents who travel across different countries to provide that support to communities. It would be nice to hear whether or not Jamaica garnered that support. I'm not sure.
Now, every year they take physicians down on some type of visit where where they perform different services by bus or something throughout the country. Has anybody taken? I know the Michelle, our attorney for the task force. All right, she took a Christian group down and did a presentation in Jamaica, maybe 5-6 years back, and part of it included psychologists who she brought the news back to us that there were hundreds, possibly thousands of people that appeared to the psychologist and was asking for help with PTSD. because there were so many gunshots going off in Jamaica's communities that it seemed like the entire community, to include the emergency ward at KPH, all the physicians were having PTSD.
Mhm.
So is there any group that goes down that tries to address it since that was identified 5 or 6 years ago? Are you aware of any?
No, I'm not aware of any. I do know that we have a symposium coming up in December, though.
In
Um,
Jamaica?
yes, over by UWI, we will be talking about trauma is a point of discussion. I say we because Boston Children's Hospital is going to be a part of this symposium, so I'll be there. I did send Mr. Rattigan the flyer. I don't know if he still has it.
Yeah, I'm gonna. Sorry, but yeah, I'm gonna post it next week.
Yeah, but that's in December, and trauma is a part of it. Eating disorders, body image. So we'll be talking about some important mental health concerns that are not talked about in Jamaica but are consequential. Skin bleaching, that's also a topic that's going to be explored as well during that symposium.
Mhm. But I hope PTSD will be one of the main ones addressed.
Listen,
Yeah.
Michelle, wanna thank you for coming on. We have one more hour, actually less than an hour, and
Hmm.
this is home. You're welcome. I know you're a very busy lady. Uh, and I need to. You make it sound like you're always available, but I have to make the people know. So I have to fight like crazy to get you because you're always busy, especially on a Saturday. And during the work week, forget about it. So no, I just want to thank you for coming on and sharing your training and your expertise with us. And I hope that whatever you provided will have some positive impact on somebody, whether even if it's not preventing them, but it would alert them to some of the signs. So if they see a family member or a friend or anyone, you know, um, uh, exhibiting some of those signs of depression or suicidal tendencies, then they can be reported. So just want to thank you for coming on again and look forward to seeing. And yes, I will post the conference that you mentioned coming up in Jamaica in December. So
Thank you so much. And
And
thank
your
you for
partner in
having
psych.
me.
Your partner in psych was Mr.
you
Net.
can stick around because we have some.
She had other commitments, so couldn't be here. And thanks, Kevin, as usual. Yeah. All
All
right,
right.
bye, everyone. Have a good night.
All right. Take care of yourself. Thank you so much. Say hello to your sis for me. All right. No, folks. I have something for Shona here, and it's not pretty. No, Kevin, I laugh because Kevin know what it is, right? No, burial happened, and as we said before, we're extremely sensitive about this issue because we have family members, whether blood or otherwise, we're all family, and so we're concerned about the people affected in Jamaica by it, and we're hoping that tomorrow will be a better day for them, especially people in southern Jamaica. But I want to show you something. When you take, I will get to what this government has done with the bond, the catastrophe bond. Most of you have never heard of this thing, I'm sure. But I want to show you something. Um, them cuss out the diaspora, or at least over segment of the diaspora, and say, "Hey, we're not good. We are traitor. We are this and we are that." Right? Um, don't laugh at that, Kevin. Kevin, I want to show you something. Here we go. Here is something that came out